I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Waynesboro for Monday, August 23rd, 2021. Mr. Allen, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we got a good group here tonight. Thank you all for coming out. I think I know what a lot of folks are here about, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But for those in attendance tonight, if you wish to speak during a public hearing or the citizen comment period, sign-up sheets are in the back at that back table. Please sign up, and then you'll be called forward at the appropriate time to speak. During the citizen comment period of our meeting tonight, you will be allowed 4 minutes to speak. There's a little traffic type signal here. It'll be green. It'll be green for about 2.5 minutes. Then it's going to turn yellow. You got about 30 seconds of yellow to start winding down, and then when it turns red, your 4 minutes are up. If you're expecting council members to talk back and forth with you during citizen comment period, that doesn't happen. You come to make your comment, we'll make note of your comment, and then we can meet somewhere after a meeting and talk and discuss matters off record, okay? So with that said, Mr. Hamp is going to advise us the rules for those still watching remotely, how they can participate in this call-in period.
Yes, sir. Good evening. The call-in number remains 844-844-9200. That's 844-844-9200. When prompted, please enter the access code for the meeting, which is 398145, followed by the pound sign. That's 398145, and then the pound sign. At this point, you'll hear the Q&A session has started, at which time you should press 6. Following that, you'll hear, if you'd like to speak, please press 1 to be added to the queue. At that point, please press 1. And once you're in the queue, you'll hear the audio feedback from the meeting. And eventually, you'll hear from our moderator, who will prompt you to share your comments with council.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp. With that, we're at item number 3. Has everyone had a chance to look over the meeting agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hofstetter. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0 with one absent. 4-0 with one absent. Already messed up. And then item number 4 is matters from mayor. And I have a feeling most of you are in here tonight about the animal ordinance. We're going to hear a presentation from our staff on the animal ordinance tonight. There is no vote on this ordinance tonight. We will not be taking a vote. It's simply an informational session for city council members so that we can take time to go over the ordinance, meet with our constituents, go over the ordinance with our constituents, and then we'll come back in September and it will be presented one more time, at which time we will make a vote. But by then, it gives us a chance to work out the kinks that people are seeing in this ordinance. So it's no vote tonight. The vote won't be until September, and we've still got almost a full month to work on getting this right so that we get it done the first time, okay? That's all I have tonight. Are there, pardon? Oh, that comes item number 7. Yeah.
Okay.
The next session is matters from council members, and I know Vice Mayor Williams has something she would like to say, and I guarantee you Dr. Hofstetter has some follow-up information for you.
You betcha.
Like Bobby, I can pretty much imagine why most of you are here tonight, and I'd like to thank you for being here. It's so important for us to be able to hear your concerns and listen to you. I also appreciate those who took the time to email or call in the last few days. It's important that we hear from you because when people are silent, bad laws are passed. So, again, thank you.
Dr. Hofstetter.
All right. Well, with the biweekly COVID update, if you've watched the numbers, things are trending the wrong direction, particularly if we look at the Waynesboro, Stanton, Augusta area in total. that the graph is certainly going up. Waynesboro's numbers have not committed to a real trend yet. Some days we're up, some days we're back down, but as a region, our COVID numbers are up. And as a physician, I can tell you, we're seeing more of it. So, we are at a point, again, that is important to start wearing our masks more regularly and get back to some of the precautions we have taken before. I encourage you still to be getting vaccines if you've not. They're available everywhere. There's new developments, as you've read, with boosters, particularly for immunocompromised immediately, and then also for folks that have had it. The recommendation is going to be 8 months after your second shot. So folks that had it in January will be eligible coming September, and that's the anticipation. We've got lots still going on, and there are parts of the country that are much worse off than we are, but we are at a spot where our numbers are going up. So I encourage us all to get back and pulling on the same side of the rope here, because if not, we're going to end up like we've seen other places go. Numbers in terms of vaccination, we continue to inch up. We don't jump with leaps and bounds. The fully vaccinated percent of the population, 62.8% here in Waynesboro. At least one vaccine, that's the adult population, 68.7%. We talked last time, getting closer and closer to that 70%. The total population, because it includes children, some of who can't be yet vaccinated, we're still down around 50% that are fully vaccinated. So we've got a long way to go. So again, if there are questions, please talk to your physicians, talk to your healthcare providers. I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you about your personal concerns, but I encourage you to go out there and look into it. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Hofstetter. Any other? All right, that brings us to item number 6. Item number 6 is to approve the consent agenda. Everyone had a chance to hear it last session. Any discussion on this before we take a vote? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Hofstetter. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. No discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0, one absent. And then item number 7. Item number 7 is to consider proclaiming the week of September 17th, 20 through 23, 2001 as Constitutional Week in the city of Waynesboro. Ms. Helen Willard, can you come on up? And I would like to make this presentation. This proclamation is in honor of our U.S. Constitution, whereas it is a privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees issuing of the proclamation each year by the President of the United States, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Robert Henderson, in virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Waynesboro, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd, 2001 as Constitution Week, and urge all citizens to study the Constitution, reflect on the privileges of being American, with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. She wants to get to.
Good evening, Mayor Henderson and Waynesboro City Council members. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to address you and to share information about Constitution Week. The designation of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week had its origins with the DAR 66 years ago, and with encouragement of the DAR members and the support of United States Senator Nolan, the resolution to designate this time as Constitution Week became public law 9/15 in August 2nd, 1956. Part of the mission of the DAR is to promote patriotism, and this is why members of the DAR and the Colonel Thomas Hugert chapter seek out ways to publicize Constitution Week. In the past, this chapter has worked only with 2 schools in Stanton. However, this year we expanded our outreach to 24 schools in Augusta County, 7 of which are located in Waynesboro. Tonight, I am honored to be here to accept the Constitution Week proclamation. All of your schools will receive a copy of your proclamation so that the teachers can use this as part of their instruction during this commemorative week. However, Kate Collins Middle School and Waynesboro High School were sent information about Constitution Week poster contest. This is a contest that will have entries from students located all over the world. In 2019, a Stanton High School student placed second in the nation. And we hope that the artwork from one of your students will either place state, division, or national. Mayor Henderson, I have copies of the information sent to the school for you to review. Another component of Constitution Week is called Bells Across America. And I say this to everyone here in the room. On September 17th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, citizens are encouraged to ring the bell to commemorate the signing of the Constitution on September 17th. I encourage you to ring your city bells, your fire trucks, your churches, and also the homes if you have bells. And every principal in Waynesboro is being asked to ring their school bells. Mayor Henderson, I also have a Constitution Week poster to give to you, and I hope that you will display it in City Hall to make people aware of Constitution Week. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you and also to serve the citizens of Waynesboro. May I approach?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this brings us to item number 8. Item number 8 is receive a presentation, recommended amendments to Chapter 14, Animals of the Code of the City of Waynesboro. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Municipal animal codes regulate animal ownership, treatment, and care to protect public safety, health, promote the general welfare, promote responsible animal ownership, and prevent nuisances. Much of Chapter 14 of Waynesboro City Code was written in 1964. The sections were amended or updated in 1996 and 2007. The proposed amendments seek to accomplish a needed comprehensive update and bring the chapter into conformance with the Code of Virginia. As city manager, I have a professional responsibility to bring to council's cognizance areas in which their attention is required or warranted. In this case, we refer to the city code and more specifically, Chapter 14, Animals. The updates are prompted by three items or 3 conditions. First, by changes in the state code that should be, in my view, incorporated into the city code. 2, or secondly, respond to complaints involving animals. And thirdly, the need to inform council of opportunities to modernize the chapter generally with the objective to establish reasonable standards for animal ownership in an urban environment and to communicate those standards to residents and prospective residents through the code. In some regards, this need is analogous, and the evolution of the community and our code are analogous to recent discussions regarding the second fire station. 15 years ago, the opportunity was generally regarded as an opportunity to enhance existing acceptable levels of service. Now, some 15 years later, the second station is regarded as a necessary to meet minimum expected level of service for a community of our size, composition, and population. Coincidentally, the last update to the animal chapter was accomplished in 2007, about the same time that the discussion about the fire station gained traction. I don't mean to directly compare fire stations to animals, but I use the analogy, perhaps an imperfect one, to illustrate that communities change and evolve, and our policies and our facilities must maintain relevance and evolve with the community. Again, I have a responsibility, I believe, to inform you of the way we ended, of how we come to this place tonight, and it may be that after this presentation and weeks of consideration, we end up in a similar position. However, if that's the case, we ought to do so by design rather than by accident. In a moment, I'll draw attention to particular provisions in the chapter that are significant and require or will evoke public input. Mr. Luke Jude will provide some additional perspective on the ordinance and the work behind it, and I note that while Mr. Jude is assisting with the presentation this evening, he is not the source of the effort, and we'd like to preserve his reputation as a seeker of compromise and goodwill-oriented solutions for the community. Ms. Michelson and I will be available to answer questions from the council about the ordinance. I think the responsible course of action, as you've related already, Mr. Mayor, is to present the content of the ordinance this evening, respond to questions that the council may have, receive input from the public, and consider placing the item on the agenda for final consideration or additional consideration, if it's council's will, for the September 27th meeting. This time, before I ask my colleague, Mr. Jude, to speak, I'll draw attention to the following provisions. Previously codified local provisions regarding dangerous or vicious dogs are removed, and the provisions of the Code of Virginia recently adopted are inserted. The council has limited discretion here, and staff would urge the council to adopt the provisions of the state code rather than develop and codify their own standards locally. The chapter recommends the prohibition of roosters. The chapter recommends limiting backyard chickens, or chickens generally, to 10 per household, and free roaming chickens are prohibited. There is no grandfathering of existing fowl, and owners will have 90 days from enactment to come into compliance. It may be helpful and comforting in some regard to hear a word about compliance. Currently, and I would anticipate going into the future, the city acts on provisions of the animal ordinance by complaint. So it's not, we do not intend or have a plan to go door to door seeking out violations of the ordinance if adopted, and we would simply respond by complaint regarding a particular residence. Having said that, and without suggesting or encouraging animal owners to evade the law, it is conceivable then that if you had an animal that was in violation of the law but did not draw unnecessary attention to itself or the residents, that it could go on without encountering regulatory action by the local government. Goats are permitted temporarily for brush clearing presently, and it's contemplated that if adopted, goats would not be permitted as household pets or animals. Persons are limited to owning 4 dogs or 5 cats over 4 months in age, not to exceed 7 animals in total. As noted above, the city has discretion with the elements of this portion of the ordinance, and you may elect to whether or not to impose restrictions of this nature. If you elect to impose restrictions of this nature, you may substitute different restrictions, more permissive or more restrictive, according to your judgment. Presently, pigs are prohibited in the city. No allowances or exceptions are made for companion animals under our code, such as pigs, which are increasingly common in some communities. Other cities, So our research bears out that the provisions that we recommend regarding limiting ownership of dogs or cats are perhaps more restrictive on a spectrum of communities that we've surveyed. And I would say that it was not a comprehensive survey. We tried to focus on municipalities of similar size in the valley or adjacent to the valley, but not exclusively so. So our work in that regard is admittedly more restrictive. We find that most localities are more permissive than the city of Waynesboro where pigs are concerned. So I would draw your attention there, and I think Mr. Jude, his presentation puts into more detailed perspective of how our work in the ordinance as constructed compares to neighboring and similar sized localities. So with that, I'll hand it off to Mr. Jude, and following Mr. Jude's presentation, we'll take questions from the council and move on from there.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is not normally sort of my section of the ordinance to address, but Mr. Hamp asked me to provide you all some more context. I appreciate, I don't know that he meant to absolve me there, but I think it's may have asked me to speak and given me that partially because I'm a former urban chicken keeper. So I'm a big fan of them in general. But I'll talk a little bit about urban chickens, the movement that exists, and then what other localities are doing around us. We do see a trend across cities of livestock, including chickens, cattle, and pigs, being increasingly restricted from U.S. cities post-World War II. Before, in the 19th century, you would have seen all kinds of livestock roaming around cities. But in recent decades, we've seen a movement to bring back some animals into cities, particularly chickens. Motivations are very similar to gardening. It's participation in the production of local food. It's a way to get good food for cheaply by taking care of animals in your backyard. One hen can lay as many as 200 to 300 eggs per year, though often they only lay for a few years of their life. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that close to 5% of American households keep chickens. So if we're thinking about the city of Waynesboro, my guess is, I don't know exactly, it'll depend on our culture here. But my guess is that we would see something like 50 households owning chickens in the city. The reason that many localities take it upon themselves to regulate chickens is because of the nuisance risks of them. Nuisances that are commonly associated with chickens include noise, specifically from roosters, not so much from hens. Smell and rodents if the chicken coops are not maintained properly, if they're sealed in well and cleaned frequently, those can be avoided. And then sometimes the risk of disease, particularly if they're near agricultural poultry facilities. Backyard chickens are actually less likely to contract diseases than chickens that are raised in large concentrated animal feeding operations, but they're less it's more at random because you have a lot of different owners. And so if they're close to a large poultry facility, then often it's a concern to have disease spread to them. And so that's why many ordinances sort of keep some control of that. We don't have any large poultry facilities in the city, so it's not a huge issue for us. There's a wide variety of approaches, depending on the community, to regulating chickens and other animals. I would just say a word here, and I harp on this all the time, but like all land use issues, it involves decisions about shared space. We're a city, and so we all live very close together. We share a lot of public space. We share even our private space to a certain extent. And so property rights are a very effective way of dealing with many of those problems, but they're not an effective way of dealing with all problems. Everything that we do affects all of our neighbors. And when everything we do affects our neighbors, what we have to do is deliberate with our neighbors like we're doing tonight and discuss what kind of lives we would all like to live and live around. I will say that there's a bit of a trend with local regulation of backyard chickens where you tend to see in rural areas, and not just with chickens, but with other ordinances as well, that people live fairly far apart. Their actions don't tend to affect each other as much, and so ordinances tend to be very loose. As areas suburbanize, as you get a lot more suburban development in rural areas, they tend to adopt very strict ordinances because suddenly the houses are close together, everything people do affects their neighbors, and sort of the rural solution is, well, you shouldn't, it's my property, shouldn't affect me. And then you tend to see a little bit of a loosening as cities get even denser, as people sort of acknowledge that that becomes impossible. You can't actually prevent nuisance from spilling over property lines, and some of what a city is a place where people coexist and deal with each other a little bit. So you'll see that a little bit in our neighbors and how they've dealt with the issue. Looking at the legal status of chickens in residential areas, and this doesn't refer to agricultural operations. But in Stanton, the maximum number of chickens is 6. Roosters are prohibited, and they're required by permit. And as Mr. Hamp alluded to, we enforce all animal ordinances on a complaint basis. So there's 2 ways of dealing with any kind of regulatory action. We can do either permit or by complaint. So by permit means that you have to go and draw a permit. You know, you have to proactively say, I would like to do this, and the locality actively comes out and checks. And so that's if something is a particularly serious violation. You know, if someone's building a building, you have to come and draw a building permit and get an inspection, because we need to make sure that before that joist gets covered up, that it's solid and it's, you know, the building's not going to collapse on people. But for things that are less important, like property maintenance, you know, like having tall grass, you know, it's not a big deal if somebody has 3-foot grass. Somebody complains and somebody comes out, cites them, etc. And so I believe the ordinance that we've proposed suggests operating by complaint, and localities around us vary in whether they operate by permit or by complaint. Augusta County allows a maximum of 4 chickens and does not allow roosters, and also requires a permit, though it's a significantly cheaper one. Over on the other side of the mountain, Charlottesville has no limit on the maximum number of chickens and allows roosters and does not require any kind of permit. Again, back to sort of, as cities get denser and more urban, people then become more tolerant of overlapping nuisances. Albemarle County, very suburban, all chickens absolutely prohibited. Roanoke City allows up to 10 chickens on parcels of under 20,000 square feet and 40 on parcels over that. And they do allow roosters, and they do not require a permit. They're all complaint-based. Roanoke County allows 6, again, a more suburban county. They do not allow roosters, and there is no permit required there as well. They're also complaint-based. Harrisonburg, just to our north, allows a maximum of 6 chickens. They do not allow roosters, and they do require a permit. Rockingham County around them actually has no limit and allows roosters and no permit. And then Lexington and Montgomery counties also have limit the number. Montgomery prohibits them on all lots under 2 acres. And they do not allow roosters, and they do require permits. So that's the legal status of chickens in some of our neighbors. I did throw together quickly a slide on, Mr. Hamp mentioned that the ordinance deals with dogs and pigs, I believe. And so here's an ordinance on dogs and pigs in nearby localities. As you can see in Stanton, Roanoke City, and Roanoke County, the maximum number of dogs is limited to 4 and 3 respectively. In most other localities, there appears to be no limit on the maximum number of dogs. Pigs, there's quite a bit of variation. Stanton did actually ban pigs until fairly recently, when that ordinance was repealed. Augusta County, Albemarle County, Harrisonburg, Rockingham, and Montgomery County all do not have any ordinance related to pigs. Charlottesville City, Roanoke City and County, and Lexington all prohibit pigs. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about neighboring localities and how they handle these subjects.
I guess the only ones that we're looking at are like Roanoke, have a specific lot size for the number of.
Yeah, Montgomery County has a 2-acre threshold. Roanoke City and County make a distinction at 20,000 square feet, which would be a very large, that's a half-acre residential lot. And in Roanoke City, it's 10 for lots that are under 20,000 square feet, 40 above that. Roanoke County allows 6 if you're below 20,000 square feet, and 9 if you're above 20,000 square feet.
What is our average lot size in Waynesboro?
The typical lot size, I mean, it varies by the zone, but I would say 6,000 square feet is your typical city lot. Yeah. In the more suburban areas at the edge of the city, more like 12 to 15,000. But kind of all the core neighborhoods, I would say your typical city lot is a 50 by 50 by 125 or 50 by 150, or sometimes 50 by 100. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Lou.
All right, no problem. I can leave this up as long as you want for discussion purposes as well.
Thank you. Anything else?
I don't have other remarks prepared. If the council has questions, Ms. Michelson and I are happy to respond to them.
I would have a question in reference to chickens, that there's more than 6 or 4 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a complaint now from a neighbor from either noise or smell, do we have laws on the books now that would address that?
Would invite, Mr. Juday is shaking his head. I don't think would want Mr. Or Captain Shaw to confirm. Ms. Martin is shaking her head. No, we don't think we have local laws that do that.
So there's no protection if a neighbor has 10 or 20 chickens now running through their yard, fenced in, and there is an odor. There's nothing even under health speculations or anything.
I would want to be thoughtful about how I answer that question. Can say with confidence that there's no authority afforded to the locality in order to deal with that or mitigate that, I would say, enforce against it.
I was just going to add that unless it rose to the level of a nuisance, a public nuisance, that it was to such of a degree that it would constitute a nuisance within the law, then we do have, the health sanitation aspects that you were referring to, Mr. Allen, perhaps would come under the nuisance control. And there are, on our books and under the Virginia Code, enforcement provisions to abate the nuisance, but not necessarily the number of chickens. It would be more directed toward cleaning it up,
I'm
making
talking
sure it
about the
was.
smell, or if it's rodents, that it's being drawn to that property.
But that's, it would have to be a very severe degree to reach the level of a public nuisance. It's not just maybe bothering one or two neighbors, it's bothering the general public health and welfare of the citizens of Waynesboro, which is maybe a bit higher standard than one or two neighbors complaining that I can hear the chickens or smell the chickens all the time.
A question about licensure for dogs and cats. Currently, we do have dog licensure.
Correct.
Do we currently have cat licensure at all?
We do not.
And so that is another proposal that's in here.
No, we're not proposing that we license cats.
I think in the body of the text, it does mention licensing cats. So, again, we'll have to review
I
that.
would want to clarify that.
Did that come up at all? Does anybody else license cats? As far as you know, Luke? No, okay. I would have to look back. When I was reading through it, I thought I came across that.
And do we have any type of record on how many complaints we have against chickens and roosters, or can we get that data?
We can get that data. I think I did research on that for a resident. I think we had 15 complaints over a 2-year period regarding chickens, and I can't quote the number of complaints regarding roosters. Now, I would note that the part of the genesis for this work is not all complaints that we encounter on staff level, or I would imagine in your experience as elected officers, are logged through the EOC. And so the citation that I'm providing is a reference to what we have logged through the 911 center.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I do see section 14-44. It shall be unlawful for any person to own a dog or cat 4 months or older unless such dog or is licensed as required by the provisions. Dogs and cats shall be licensed. So it does mention cat licensure there. So,
Thank you.
The limit mentioned by Mr. Hamp also is tied to having authorized licensed dogs and cats. So if you have under the limit, you can have over the limit if you are properly permitted, is the way this reads.
okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Hamp?
So right now, if we get complaints about a rooster crowing under the ordinance of the noise ordinance, we can issue a citation or we cannot.
The crowing of the rooster probably would not rise to a violation of the noise ordinance.
But it's not a nuisance if every morning at 5:30, and that's the calls that I have received.
Right. It's not what I would say a legally defined nuisance. I think what we find is, and part of this is, again, trying to discern a standard for a municipal environment and establish a standard that while a rooster crowing at 5:30 daily for a limited amount of time may not violate your standard of a nuisance legally, it might be surprising to some who live in a city that they would hear that.
What about a barking dog?
I think it would be less surprising to hear a barking dog in a city.
Do we have any statistics as to if there's been any summonses issued through the police department for barking dogs? Because I know over my time on city council, probably one of the most calls, complaints I get about would be neighbors' dog barking. Neighbors call me, they don't want to call 911 because the first thing they ask is your name and your address. And then sometimes I know the police officers have went down and they say, well, the person they go to see says, well, why are you here? Well, Mr. Hamp called and told me that your dog's bothering me. And so a lot of neighbors don't want to fall out with their neighbors over a dog barking, but they also don't want to listen to a dog bark for 30 minutes or for an hour. And I think under normal conditions, if you have a dog outside and a rabbit or a squirrel walks by or runs by, the dogs will bark. Usually out of sight, they stop. But if they continue, and have seen it and heard it and got up and went to listen myself before I would call somebody to complain. And you have a dog, it just seems like he's singing a song. So he thinks he's good and he won't stop. I just wondered,
I think we can get that information and provide it at a subsequent meeting. And I understand that in our service together that there's been persistent frustration, some measure of dissatisfaction about our ability to deal with barking dogs in the community.
And I've got a neighbor who, he was going to sell his house and had a realtor come, and the realtor said, "Does that dog next door bark like that all the time?" And he said, "All the time."
Right.
And she said, "Well, we might have a hard time selling your house to people come to look at it, and the dog's out there trying to welcome the new prospective buyers." So, I think things like that we want to try to look at, see if it's already covered, how much problems we have. Maybe it's been 6 months since we've had a complaint with the 911 center. But I'm not more concerned about that. I just want everybody to know that we try to be consistent and try to do things that are right for our neighbors when sometimes your neighbor won't do the right thing to be considerate of you. But when we get to the numbers and what we're looking at here tonight, and more information that we'll be getting, I'm going to tell you right now, I have a really, really hard time for anyone that's an animal lover or have animals in their home if they had more than this limit that we would pass. And then we tell you, well, you're going to have to cut out some of your stock here. I only have one animal, one cat, and my wife would throw me out before she'd throw the cat out. So trust me. And as much as I fuss about the cat, I love that cat too. So if we had 6 cats or 10 cats and this law was passed, I don't know what would happen in the Allen household. My wife probably say, we're moving. But these are things that we really need to take a long, hard look at. Got a lot of friends, I think they care more about their animals than they do some of the people in their family. And so I want everybody to know that my ears are open. I'm listening to what everybody says. And that I know I've been, people have said that I'm a dog hater. It's not I'm a dog hater, but my last dog had died about to kill me. So I've been real hesitant to get another dog just for that reason. But I'm getting to the age now, if I get one, he might outlast me. So it might solve that problem. But I hope we all consider and think and are very thoughtful, especially some elderly people that I know. That's sometimes the only contact they have. And so we have to be very considerate here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I do appreciate your comments. I do have one question. As far as the hens go, we were going to try to limit the hens. Well, this calls for limiting hens to 10, yet some people have ducks as well, and they're not really. Is there any conversation about, okay, if you have 5 hens and 6 ducks, are we going to be in trouble?
Let me, before I misspeak, I don't think we provide for a mixed coop, is the term, so
Okay.
it deals with.
Okay, very good.
One last clarification, section 14-17, tethering animals. My recollection is we do not currently have any tethering prohibition, so this is new.
Yes.
To update and I think bring us into a better understanding of animal care. So wanted to bring that up too.
Thank you, Dr. Heinz.
So I would just reiterate that, to respond to Mr. Allen's comments, that I would encourage council to consider this a starting point. As the city manager, I'm responsible for the work, and to the extent that folks are satisfied with it or think that this is a good point at which to start, I'm glad that you're pleased. To the extent that you feel like this is a poor position from which to start, then I bear responsibility for the recommendation. But again, I think that whether we've highlighted the areas in which the council has discretion to work, and I think it's incumbent upon the council to try to discern what our community preferences are in this regard. It's incumbent upon me to alert you to the fact that, again, we may end up in exactly the same place that we are today, and if that's the case, at least we will have done so by design and with some intentionality. But I don't think it's a comfortable place for the manager, the staff, and to some extent the council and even the community to be, where we have not examined and discussed and articulated what the community standards are, what the rules are around some of these animals, and whether we want to take a more contemporary approach or whether we're comfortable with the rules as they were established mainly in 1964, 96, and 2007.
Mike, and we appreciate all the work that you and staff have put into it, because it's been a lot of work, and this is a good place to start the conversation, so we can work on it for the next 3 or 4 weeks and iron out what needs to be ironed out and come back. All right, any other comments on this matter? Thank you all very much for your input. That brings us to item number 9. Item number 9 is consider introducing an ordinance appropriating forfeited asset sharing program funds to the general fund for the purchase of a police vehicle. Mr. Hamp?
Mr. McCormick will help us with this item.
Mr. McCormick? How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Periodically, the city of Waynesboro is the recipient of funds from the Commonwealth of Virginia as part of its participation in the Forfeited Asset Sharing Program through the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. Any funds received must be used to increase the resource of the agency and may not be used to offset the resources. The purpose of this ordinance is to transfer funds from the State Asset Forfeiture Fund to the General Fund to purchase an additional vehicle for the Detective Division of the Police Department. The amount of the transfer will cover the cost of the purchase of an additional vehicle, an additional unmarked police vehicle, as well as the equipment needed to outfit that vehicle. A little bit different. We are receiving funds here, but we received the funds last year, so this will need to be introduced tonight and then hold over to your next meeting if you guys so choose to introduce it.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Any questions for Mr. McCormick? All right, is there a motion to introduce the ordinance appropriating $60,000 from restricted state seizure fund for the purchase of a patrol vehicle?
I would move to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any discussion? All right, this ordinance will be considered at our September 13th regular business meeting. Item number 10 is to consider appointing a candidate for the Cultural Commission.
Mr. Jabril Tyler is presented for your consideration, and for efficiency's sake, I'll note also that the same individual is presented for your consideration and appointment to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Perfect. Yeah, everybody get a chance to read his bio today. Is there a motion to appoint Jabril Tyler to the Cultural Commission and to the Parks and Rec Commission?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 on both matters, one absent. And then item number 12, communications, correspondence, and calendar. Mr. Hamp.
I don't have anything this evening, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right, item number 13, this is the citizen comment period. This is where we invite you to come forward and share your comments with city council. Just remember, you won't be getting a reply back from council members. You'll be making a comment to us. We'll document it. And then if you want to meet at a later time, we'll meet with you. The 4-minute clock will be running here, so periodically as you're giving your comments, take a look up to see where you are as far as yellow, red, and then be respectful of a lot of people in this room and shut her down at 4 minutes. All right, Mr. Ham.
Yes, sir. Leah Cave.
Good evening. Bear with me, I've never done this before. This is very
You'll be
intimidating.
just fine.
I do not have anything prepared because in all honesty, I spent my weekend looking at real estate. I am fully prepared to sell my house and leave Waynesboro to protect my animals. I'm sorry.
Take a second, you're fine.
I moved here 5 years ago because I love Waynesboro. I love this small town feel, I love the people, and I love how welcoming it is. I no longer feel like my family is welcome here. I have 4 children currently attending schools. I have a freshman at high school. She's a straight A student. She is on the Honor Society. She plays sports for the school. I have 2 children at Berkeley Glen who are also AB Honor Roll students, and I have a son who is starting preschool at First Baptist. My husband is involved with the Little League. He's on the board. He coaches. He's involved at the YMCA. And I periodically feed the police department on the weekends. The rest of my family is what I'm concerned about. I have 2 dogs. I have 3 cats. I have 8 hens and 2 roosters. And I also have 2 house pigs. I never realized that they were not allowed. The current ordinance states nothing except regulations on how you can pen your animals outside. My animals are not outside. I have pictures that I can show you. They are inside. They are my son's best friends. They sleep with him at night. I am a stay-at-home mom. My animals are never left alone. We spent great detail and money ensuring that our yard would be safe for them when they went outside to use the bathroom. I spent over $1,500 on a chicken coop and a pen so that it was not an eyesore. It is cleaned weekly. My animals are cooped up every night. My rooster is not let out in the mornings before the sun comes up, so you don't get a 5:30 wake-up call. I did not go out looking for roosters. When you get baby chicks, sometimes that's what happens. Last year, during quarantine, my hen went broody, and I had 1 rooster from when I got baby chicks, and my children wanted desperately to have their hen hatch a chick. Well, the 1 egg we gave was another rooster. They are my pets. They come inside with me. My hen gets a bubble bath and has me blow dry her feathers, and she raises up her wings. They are not a nuisance. My neighbors love them, my pigs and my chickens. Fresh eggs certainly help. I'm asking that if you do pass these new ordinances to please grandfather in the pets that we currently have. Allow us to keep our family members. They are everything to some of us. I have no problem paying for permits. I invite every single one of you to come to my house and meet my pigs, see my chickens. Don't make me leave Waynesboro. And I have pictures if you want to see them.
Crystal Graham.
I'm going to start by not starting with my prepared remarks. A lot of you may have seen this photo circulate on social media of me and my husband in pajamas with our 6 dogs in matching pajamas. telling us that they're not going to come door to door and that we can evade the law by not getting complaints when there's a misdemeanor attached to this is not appropriate. It's not appropriate. We need to address this in another way. None of my neighbors have ever made a complaint. I spent most of yesterday in tears when I heard about this, and when I read the proposed pet ordinance on council's agenda tonight. I'm not a hoarder. I do not own dangerous animals. I own 6 small dogs: Cookie, Snickers, Barley, Bella, Moki, and Tyrion. 3 Shih Tzus, 2 Yorkies, and 1 miniature poodle. I don't have children. We've been city residents on and off since 1999 and recently bought a new house with a large city lot, .40 acres, which is large for the city, and we upgraded the fencing before we moved in to give our dogs the best life. They've never escaped, though none of them are inclined to run away. They're inside dogs, going outside to burn energy, explore, and do their business. We work from home, so they're very rarely alone. They are properly registered with the city, and all are spayed or neutered. They go to the vet regularly. They get rabies shots and other vaccines, dental work recommended by our vet. My husband said if we did have kids, I would have likely bubble wrap them. He's probably right. I take our dogs to the vet for every small thing, from small nails, and today even for allergies. They are regularly groomed, even those crazy Shih Tzus, who I think drink Miracle Grow when I'm not looking, and require trips to the groomer every 6 weeks or so. In cooler months, we take 2 at a time for walks around the neighborhood, and they play with the kids. Our dogs have their own Instagram page with more than 4,300 followers. Our teenage neighbor who suffers from anxiety and depression comes over regularly for self-care to play with our dogs. We have a list of people in line who want to puppy sit for us when we occasionally travel. Many would say our dogs have better life than some humans. I wouldn't disagree. Enacting a blanket policy that has no grandfather clause makes us choose between our 6 dogs. My vet said today that I should ask you, out of our 6 dogs here, which 2 should we send to the shelter that could possibly be euthanized because they're at limits right now? Imagine choosing to give away 2 of your own children. This is what I feel we are being faced with. Do we give away our Yorkie, who was abused as a young pup and hops around our yard on 3 legs? Or one of the Shih Tzus who gives us hundreds of kisses at night? Or one of our senior pets? We have 3. They're over the age of 13. Being forced to make a decision like this is cruel. This proposed ordinance as it reads is unfair to families who have pets and are following the law as it stands on the books now. When we added animals to our family, 4 of ours are rescues, we weren't violating city codes. We shouldn't have the fate of our family in the hands of one person tasked with deciding if we have an exceptional circumstance. If one neighbor doesn't like us because we have a rainbow flag up in our yard or a political sign up, can they speak out against our dogs and the city deny our permit? I don't think it's fair to tell citizens who love their animals more than most people that they have to give up their animals because of some arbitrary number of pets city council decides they can own. I urge you to adopt a policy that has a grandfather clause or gives us a clear set of guidelines for what qualifies as an exceptional circumstance so we can put pet owners like us who are responsible at ease during this process. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chris Graham.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Chris Graham, 1511 Chatham Road. You just heard from my wife. She just told you she spent most of yesterday in tears when she first came to know the details of this proposed ordinance on the number of household pets and other animals that can be housed in the city. I spent the day spitting fire. I'm going to give you a different presentation than the first 2 did. And what we've heard here tonight might seem to placate a lot of us in attendance here who strenuously oppose the restrictions that are being proposed and put in place. But you went ahead and introduced the ordinance, and you're telling us that you're going to vote on this in a month. So one thing I have learned in 25 years of following local government, state government, federal government, is not to trust anything anyone in government tells me. I hate to be that way. Individually, I know everyone up here. Well, I don't know the new council. I've dealt with you folks a lot. Sam Hostetter is my doctor. I can't trust that you're going to do the right thing in 4 weeks. I can't trust that. And so as a result, I'm going to make a case. I'm still trying to figure out what the problem that you're trying to solve is. I'm trying to figure that out. I've read the staff report online. Staff report was vague. to say anything. Vague is probably a nice way to put it. What we get from the staff is a notion that the ordinance as proposed will get the city code in line with state code. That's it. The state code doesn't spell out the numbers that the staff's recommending. We heard that tonight. We've seen that the relevant state law simply empowers localities to set their own limits, this being a Dillon rule state. I've covered city government before. I kind of know the rules here. I did run for city council once, Bruce. Congratulations, you beat me. And I'm glad you did. My life's been a lot better than me.
I'll switch with you.
I'm sure you would, and I wouldn't switch with you. You're doing a great job. From a review of other localities in the Commonwealth, there is many different numbers in terms of limits, as there are localities. We saw that again tonight, right? This isn't about getting the city code in line with state code. We have to presume that because the staff report doesn't spell out an outcry from the public, that there isn't an outcry. Now, I know that you're hearing some things from different people. We don't have numbers. That's the problem I've got with this. How many people would be impacted by the proposed restrictions? The staff report offers nothing in terms of how many people would be impacted by these restrictions. How will the quality of life in Waynesboro be improved with the adoption of the proposed ordinance? Nothing is said in the staff report. We heard nothing tonight how life would be improved here in Waynesboro if this is adopted. What we get is from staff again is that we need to get in line with state code. We need to update our ordinance. The state isn't compelling this action. Nothing's compelling this action. In the meantime, a lot of people who live here, pay taxes here, have businesses here, are now being told that something they have done legally for years could, in a span of a few weeks, subject them to possible jail time. Jail time, misdemeanor offenses on one's record for owning dogs. Or that they have to get rid of members of the family or move, as Leah Cave here said just a few minutes ago. That's what you're doing here. You've proposed the ordinance. In 4 weeks, you're going to vote on it. We have to trust that you're not going to do the wrong thing. I don't have kids, no kids in your school system. I've only called for police help once in my 14 years as a most recent city resident. My wife mentioned we've lived here since 1999. One time in 22 years I've done that. I don't put stress on the police force. I've never called for fire or EMS services. I don't even use the city refuse collection services because unfortunately what the city provides in terms of refuse collection is not adequate for what we need. I pay taxes on a $300,000 plus house, run a successful business that also contributes to the local tax base, pay for my dogs as licensed, and as the law requires, whatever good that does me. And now you folks want to move the goalpost. The ordinance is still on the table. I have to say that. I'll ask you, which member of your family do you want to subject to a government official's permitting whim? I don't know. I asked that question of you. Think about that. Your staff has given no legal basis for this proposed legal change. You're overstepping your legal authority. You're overstepping your moral authority. I'm going to look each of you in the eye sitting on that dais right now. Fix this.
Sonny Golder?
Before you come up, just to make this clear, we have not introduced an ordinance. We are not introducing an ordinance tonight. This ordinance is being presented to us for the first time. We didn't know what all the laws were in here. We just received this the same time you did. We're still trying to digest this. So we'll make this the best we can amongst ourselves and with the help of the community.
We were told a vote could happen in a month.
No.
That was said tonight in the meeting.
September 27th.
gonna bring it back.
It will be coming up for a vote on September 27th, up or down.
That's a
But,
vote in a month,
but
right?
this will change by then. We're,
We'll trust that you'll do that.
yeah. And another thing that you said, that people will go to jail for this. These are class 4 and 3 misdemeanors. There's no jail time for class 3 or 4 misdemeanors. They're punishable by,
There's no jail time for a misdemeanor in Virginia.
not for a 3 or 4. Class 1 or 2, you go to jail. Class 3 or 4, just fines.
3 offenses, the third offense doesn't go to jail.
No,
You get a misdemeanor found on your record. You get a misdemeanor on your record, and that doesn't put you in jail.
that doesn't put you in jail, no. So those facts are not right.
On your record, sir?
I didn't say it's right. I just said that you said people would go to jail for this. They won't go to jail. And that's enough. We'll go to the next person now. I just wanted to clear this up before we got too far into this. And we can talk afterwards if you like.
Sonny Golder?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so first what I want to say is I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to do something that my dad says. He says to me that I'm going to treat you like an adult, and you guys are adults, so I feel like that's fair. And I just want you guys to listen to me. So I've learned a lot from my father, and once he told me that family is the most important thing to him, and that he would quit his job if they didn't understand the commitment he has to our family. I really think that's a great quality, and pets are part of that family for us. If you don't know, right now we're fostering 4 kittens, and we have 2 cats, so that's 6 cats in the house right now. They're really important to us because, first of all, for our mental health, because we have a lot of mental issues in the family, and pets are really, really good for that because they're there for you, they can cheer you up, and they can watch TV with you, and they know when you're sick. So when you're sick, they'll stay by your side, and they let you know what their needs are too, especially when they're hungry. And I've seen people all over Waynesboro running with their dogs and playing with cats, and I've done these things. I've seen, there's this person that just runs with their dog a lot. I don't know if you guys have seen them, but we just think that's great. And I've had many pets. I've had pets that I've had to give away. I've had pets that have died. I've had pets that, one pet that bit me and my brother, and we had to give him away to somewhere else. And I think if that was the case, then I would understand, but that's not what this is. I would understand if there are a bunch of, like, wild, vicious pets running around, but that's not what this is. It's just the number. If you take away our pets, then you're taking away part of our family, and we're gonna be left feeling empty when a pet runs away or when a pet dies. And if you have a family or pets, you understand that you can't leave your family behind. And if you don't see your pets as families, then I'm sorry, but you're not a good owner, because that's what they are. They're more than companions or friends. And as my dad said, family is the most important thing, and don't test family, because if family moves, then so are we, and so are a lot of people in this room.
Thank you very much.
Lori Grabinski.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Well, of course, this is the second time I've been here. We all know that. I'm the one with the chickens, and I keep a very clean coop. I mean, I have my vet come out, they're checked, they're NPIP, they're cleaned every 2 to 3 days a week. I put lime down on the whole yard twice a week so it doesn't smell. I have kids from the neighborhood who come and help me and learn how to do the eggs and where chickens come from. I take them to group homes so that the older people can pet them and remember their childhood. And they are family to me. Along with my cat, my dog, my horses, and everything else. So, I know by the ordinance written that you feel chickens are disgusting, filthy, gross, mean. They may even frighten some of you. They're food on the table. What good are they if you ask yourself? Is it for you to just toss them aside, or worthless, disruptive creatures? For most of the flock owners, it's the time we take to give them care and love. I hear it so clearly. At times I see it so clearly. The glimpse of the fluffy baby chick underneath the watchful mother's wing. The sound of the recognition of being alive by listening to the morning crow of my roosters and letting me know that I made it to see another day. The flapping of the wings as the whole flock follows me. Sorry. The whole flock follows me as trusting me to provide their daily food. It takes a lot of strength, love, and responsibility for something that could be gone in a blink of an eye tomorrow. Having them in my life as so many other people. Having them in my life as so many other people gives me hope, and hope is something a lot of people could use right now. I ask council to at least consider the grandfather clause. Why pass a document that is for a few, a minority? Why hire lawyers to read over documents from other cities? Why not listen to the majority of the people in this town? When I ask you, with this new pandemic, not knowing what tomorrow will bring, why are you taking the few joys we have in our life, and mainly our freedom and our choices? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll talk after this.
Please correct the record.
We'll talk after this.
Dr. Bob Partridge, followed by Peter Van Acker.
I'm pleased to be able to talk to you this evening. Obviously, a very emotional presentation for everyone here tonight, and I just want to say my name's Bob Partridge. I live 627 Cherry Avenue. I've been a veterinarian for years here in town, and have lived in town for over 40 years. I'm speaking in favor of the revision of section 14.9 of the city code, the limitations of keeping of fowl. I have to say that I'm impressed with the revision prepared by the city. It's well written and relatively comprehensive. To me, it addresses my concerns as a veterinary healthcare professional by stressing the need for good animal husbandry practices when caring for backyard chickens. I'm going to refer to a couple of examples, particularly the one that is of most concern is every person maintaining any area for keeping chickens shall keep it in a neat and sanitary condition, free from refuse at all times, and must clean the area on a regular basis so as to prevent offensive odors. I'm not saying that those people that own chickens at this time are that way, but I think that's something that needs to be in the code because other people on down the line may not be so diligent. I called the Virginia Department of Agriculture this morning. They stress that backyard chicken owners need to be aware that there are several zoonotic diseases, that is, diseases that can be passed to people that are of concern. And the CDC stresses the very same thing. Salmonella, E. coli. I received a CDC notice here, and not to overplay it, but the salmonella outbreaks linked to backyard poultry. Investigation notice. This is dated July 23rd, 2021. Illnesses, 672. Hospitalizations, 157. Deaths, 2. States involved, 47. 1 in 4 sick people is a child younger than 5 years of age linked to backyard poultry. So I think what this particular revision is doing is addressing the concerns for really other people and many people who might get involved with backyard chickens, trying to help and give them the advice that they need to do a good job. One of my concerns too is that as we increase the number of chickens that we allow in our small backyards, that increases the potential, significantly increases the potential for disease, hygiene problems, odor, and my concern is that too many chickens in our small backyards is going to create a problem here in the future. Other communities, it's been noted, have made these regulations, and I think they've done that very thoughtfully. While I would favor the 6 chicken approach that has been set up by Harrisonburg, I do that because 6 or 7 chickens can adequately help provide eggs for the standard, like a family of 4. I would be okay with changing it to 10, as is recommended in the code revision. As far as roosters are concerned, I understand some people really like to wake up at 5:30 in the morning.
Hey, doctor.
Oh, okay. People like to wake up at 5:30 in the morning for a crowing rooster. Many people do not. And I think that that's the reason that most places that have limitations on chickens also have eliminated roosters. So I just want to say that I feel that we ought to be able to enjoy the quiet, have the quiet enjoyment of our property. And I'm concerned with roosters that way.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, city employees, my name is Peter Van Acker. I live on Walnut Avenue in Waynesboro, and it's very clear, as Dr. Partridge said, that this is an emotional issue, an important issue for folks. And I think we have some of the best pet owners in the community in this group. Not all pet owners are as great as the people that are speaking here today. And I do think that the city has a responsibility to protect animals and to ensure residents have quiet enjoyment of their property. So I'm supporting the ordinance, and with the understanding that it's written on paper and probably needs some tweaks. And I applaud the city for the work that they've done, the city employees putting this together, but clearly there are some modifications that can improve it, and I support that as well. One area that is unaddressed is bees, and that's a growing hobby around the country, and I would recommend that the city consider, let me pull this together, there are best management practices for maintaining European honeybee colonies in Virginia that are put out by the Department of Agriculture, and they have a state, I think it's a state beekeeper. I don't know how to butcher the word, and I would recommend considering that. I have a copy to give to the city if I can give this to you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to note that I know Waynesboro is a bird sanctuary, and the bird sanctuary clause does do 2 things. Say it's illegal to harm birds, but it also says you can kill birds if they're a nuisance, which is, I guess that's perhaps necessary in certain circumstances, but I would let you know that according to my colleagues and friends at the Wildlife Center of Virginia, birds are much more likely to be killed by household pets than to be a nuisance. And that's one thing that I hope many pet owners understand as well. That being said, thank you for your time and all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Amber Lipscomb, followed by Sarah Leach.
Hello, Amber Lipscomb. I live on Monroe. I am a former Kate Collins Middle School teacher. I actually taught Sunny, so I'm very proud of her for coming up here, and I'm proud to be your teacher. Did you know that Kate Collins Technology Room hatches chickens twice a year? And a lot of students like to take those chickens home to their families. And if we pass an ordinance to ban roosters, we are telling middle schoolers that the male chickens are not valued here in Waynesboro. Waynesboro Schools got a $300,000 grant in launching a high-yield garden over at Berkeley Glen. I feel like this trend in Waynesboro is growing for urban farming friendly environments. Egg farming and urban agriculture was Victory Gardens back in World War II, just like the presentation stated. It was to lessen the pressure of public food supply, which if you go to the grocery stores now, you see a lot of empty shelves. You have a Tractor Supply coming on Lou DeWitt. Tractor Supply is where I get my things for my chickens, my backyard chickens. They take my kitchen scraps so that we are not wasteful, and their compost goes to my garden. I have a responsibility to provide for my family, and a rooster allows me to continue my crop and my growth for my next generation, and my kids are involved in that process. It's a great learning environment for them. You can see that your Waynesboro Public Schools are leaning towards this as well. I do not believe you have the right to take away the protection of my hens and the future food off my children's plates for future egg producers because of your regulations. And you are being cruel for creating Class 4 misdemeanors for those in your city who are trying to provide for their families and communities. I have a neighbor who had COVID-19. She was not leaving her house. Guess what I was able to do? I brought 24 eggs to her house because I can. Waynesboro prides itself on its website for saying for family and community, and that's what community does. We share with our neighbors. And for those of that you know, our city has a lot of low-income families. If we are putting regulations on cats, you are telling those low-income families that they're going to get a $250 fine on top of being on maybe some assistance in the schools, and then making them have a Class 4 misdemeanor. I think that's cruel to your community, and I think that you need to definitely do some revisions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Sarah Leach. I live at 700 Walnut Avenue. Thank you for your time and your service. I spoke to City Council approximately 2 years ago with concerns about the current animal control ordinances, that they hadn't been updated in a number of years. Dr. Partridge has addressed the health and cleanliness issues of animals that are kept on your property. Peter Van Acker has addressed the fact that many places have animals that are not cared for properly, and we don't have a real efficient way to watch out for those people and those animals. I'm here to tell you that there are probably many, many complaints of odors and noise that you are not going to hear, because I, for one, am not going to pick up the telephone and call 911 and report a dog that's barking or a rooster that's crowing. I feel like that is for a much more important call, and I wouldn't feel comfortable making that complaint in the night or any time of the day. I feel the 911 call is there for something else. I feel like there are probably many, many complaints in the city that people have held back. They've been courteous to their neighbors. They've been kind and thoughtful to their neighbors who have not always done so for them. So I'm glad and I appreciate the fact that after this 2-year period of time, since last addressing you, you have taken the time and you've researched what other communities have done, and you're addressing now what needs to be done in our community to be brought up to the standards of the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Amy Hammer, followed by Renee Clark. Excuse me, Amy Hammer.
Hello, thank you for your time. I will note that I live in Highland County. However, I've been a part of this community for years. I started Augusta Dog Adoptions about 15 years ago. And then I was an animal control officer for the city of Stanton for 5 years. So what I really want to do is hope that maybe I can give some input that you will find to be useful. I understand that, you know, this is not being voted on, but there are certainly a lot of revisions that need to be made, if not this whole thing scrapped. So anyways, I certainly come here tonight to, you know, oppose all of it. And a couple of things that I want to point out is that, one, we don't really know what this ordinance is, what are the goals, right? So say, for example, in the state of Virginia, we have comprehensive animal welfare laws that are set by the state, right? That takes care of your neglect, abandonment, cruelty for dogs and cats. So if one of the things you want to address is making owners take better care of your animals, their animals, you don't have to write in another code, right? It's already state code. That's what lets us file cruelty charges and even seize, take people's animals away and prohibit them from owning them again, right? Setting a limit is not going to do anything for those owners. It's going to affect the good pet owners. And I want to say, too, of all the cruelty charges I placed, most of them were on people that could not take care of one dog or one cat, right? I take care of over 10 dogs at a time, all the time. I have for years. So, you know, my ability to do that, you know, other people don't have that ability. It's not about numbers, really. And then additionally, Waynesboro has a nuisance animal code as well, right? So if the goal in limiting dogs and cats is nuisance related, you have that. It already shows that they can't run at large. They can't bark, right? People can complain about that. It's in the law, and you have that law already on the books to address that. One thing I wanted to say is I don't know how cats got lumped into this. I think it's interesting that there was no comparisons to the other places in Virginia that lump cats in there, right? Yes, City of Stanton, we did 4, but nothing on cats whatsoever. We have a gift of $10,000 right now that we're offering to Waynesboro, Augusta County, and Stanton residents for spay-neuter assistance, right? I posted it on Facebook once. I had 100 calls, over 100 calls in one day for people that want to spay and neuter their cats. So what we need to do is make it easier for people to take care of their animals, not harder. And if we want them to be licensed, we're making just more things that they have to do and comply with, when a lot of times they're struggling to get them fixed and get them fed. But it doesn't mean that they're bad pet owners, and they do have community support. So again, I thank you for your time. Tethering ordinance in here, I didn't even see that, but I'm so excited. I love that. I wrote the one in the city of Stanton, and I think that is one that we should talk about more, because that can also address cruelty complaints, and that can also prevent nuisance calls. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Renee Clark. I also do not live in the city of Waynesboro. I live in Stanton, but I'm the vice president of Cat's Cradle, and also been involved with Amy in a lot of the animal issues in the community. Cat's Cradle, our goal is to keep animals out of the shelter, which is a huge taxpayer savings, and create a community that's safe for the animals to live in. The ordinance is written, actually, it's been proven in some of the more progressive cities. Like I said, I know we talked about trying to bring this up to code and make Waynesboro more progressive, but truthfully, this goes back in time. A lot of the more progressive cities that are interested in, one, saving taxpayers' dollars and also having a safe place for animals to live, do not focus on animal limits, and definitely do not do cat licensing. Cat licensing is done nowhere that I know of. Cat limits are done nowhere that I know of. I know they're not in Stanton currently. But what we do is we try to pump money into people who want to do the right things for their animals. In the past 5 years, Cat's Cradle has probably financially assisted with about 880 cats. As Amy said, there's a huge need for financial assistance for spay-neuter. That means we've probably spent upwards of $65,000 just in spay-neuter assistance that has been no cost to the taxpayers of Waynesboro. A lot of that is people who are maybe good citizens, and they're feeding a group of outside cats, possibly at their house. what we call community cats. We feel like these regulations applying to cats will actually be a detriment for those people coming forward, because they will not want to be identified as possibly getting a misdemeanor because possibly they're feeding 6 cats, 7 cats. Now they call us and ask for help. Help me get these cats spayed and neutered, which for us is a great thing because we're also into population control and animal quality of their life. We want to make sure that that's a non-lethal means to do that. Putting these things in place like cat licensing or cat limits actually also is a detriment because it'll cost the city of Waynesboro more money. Because then you have to enforce these things. You have to have animal control go out. You have to, if they're over the number, the answer would be you possibly, as someone earlier said, be fining poorer people who may not be able to pay the registration fees and maybe fine owners. Then you have to pay animal control more to go out and round these cats up. Then you have to bring them to the shelter, Shenandoah Valley Animal Services Center, who is already stretched so thin in staff and in funding. So you're going to have to up your monetary contributions to the shelter, which I wouldn't think anyone would want to do that because for community cats, it typically results in killing cats. We call it euthanasia, but if you bring a feral cat into most shelters, the greatest danger to the animal is to be killed. You know, you have to hold it for 5 days. The taxpayers of Waynesboro have to pay to feed that animal. They have to pay to euthanize that animal. Maybe you can find a barn for it to go to, but then you're going to have a lot of barn people who are going to be reluctant to come forward too because it penalizes them. So officially, Cat's Cradle is in opposition to this completely, all parts of it. As Amy Hammer said, there are laws you have right now that you can implement. You have welfare laws right now. You have nuisance laws right now that are more in compliance with the rest of the state of Virginia. You can, have those be pushed forward more by your animal control officers, but not an arbitrary number and not cat licensing. That will not help you at all. And in fact, it will be a bigger cost to the taxpayers of the city of Waynesboro. Right now, the assistance that Cat's Cradle provides to the taxpayers is by private donations. Not only do we provide spay-neuter assistance to make sure that people get their animals spay-neutered, we provide financial assistance, no cost to the taxpayers, people needing medical assistance to keep their animals, either dogs or cats. So our entire goal is to make the community safe for animals by keeping animals out of the shelter, and which is a financial benefit to you guys also and to the residents of Waynesboro. I know any of us would feel very grateful to talk with you one-on-one and to offer any assistance we could. If you feel you need to revise something, like I said, our group is completely in opposition to this. The fact that cats weren't presented and we weren't sure if the cats were actually in the bill, but we all knew the cats were in the bill is a little disturbing to me. I do know that there is no limit on cats and no licensing in Stanton. So I hope that the bill's just killed altogether. But if you need something, reach out to us and we'll be glad to offer more information. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jean Fraser, followed by Evelyn Cotton.
Good evening. I am a longtime volunteer at Shenandoah Valley Animal Services. So I'm not speaking as an employee, I'm just speaking as a concerned citizen. They are overwhelmed at all times. And I mean, this has gone on, I've been there 10 years. It never really gets any better, but they try. I mean, the staff, the people who are there really care about animals. And this is going to put even more of a burden on the shelter. I mean, it's a small shelter. In many ways, it's inadequate. And to have, seize animals from people who obviously are wonderful owners and who really, really care. I mean, yeah, there are some terrible people out there. And the laws that are on the books should be enforced, these nuisance ordinances. And tethering it would be great if dogs were not left outside 24 hours barking day and night and being blamed for that and being, accused of being a nuisance. All I can say, coming from that side of things, this could just overwhelm the shelter. And I tell you, everybody there does not want to kill animals. And we work our butts off to find good homes, and it's extremely rewarding when people do adopt. And we want to find the right homes and that sort of thing. And this is just going in the wrong direction. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am a city resident. I live one block over from Lori's Chickens and Roosters. And I want to say that no one else has covered this, so I'll cover it. I love the call of the rooster. I also love the sound of the church bells. I also love the sound of reveille coming from Fishburne and taps in the evening. And that's part of the charm of this small city. And I hate to see us lose that. I think if noise is the impetus for having this new law, these new ordinances, then I think, why don't we look at traffic, at the loud cars that are way, way, way more offensive, to your ears than these sounds that are so short and so temporary, and they're not going all the way through the whole town. That I think that's a much bigger issue. I agree with a lot of what is in this ordinance. I think it's great that, as Dr. Partridge says, that I think it's great that it encourages good animal husbandry. But I think that if we want to consider having any kind of limit, then it needs to be very specific on what the exceptions are, because at one time, I had 7 cats in the house, only for a few months because I was fostering a couple for my niece. But I had 6 cats for years, and I dare say anybody could have come in that house. Everybody who came in that house couldn't believe there were 6 cats there, and you'd never see them all at one time in the first place because that's not their personality. But I don't think anybody could have argued that we didn't take good care of them. And so I think that you really have to state real clear exceptions. And I agree with Sunny and with Crystal. I cannot imagine trying to pick which one of my cats I would have gotten rid of in order to comply. That's just unconscionable to ask a citizen to do that. So I think you definitely need to consider either grandfathering or simply not have that limit, or have something in there that states, if you get complaints and there are this many, then you can require inspections or something. But this town is small enough that you get good responses. I have had dogs in the neighborhood who bark incessantly. And one neighbor, when I approached her about it, gave me her house key. She said, I go to bed at night and I take a medication for sleeping, and sometimes it takes effect before I let the dog back in. So feel free to just come over and let the dog in. So I did. And that dog's passed away now. But there are solutions because it's a small town. Another neighbor wasn't the least bit interested in my concern about the dog that barked all the time. And so I did end up calling the police. I didn't call EOC. It wasn't life or death. The policeman, and I told the policeman, I don't want you to give my name. And the policeman was honored that and didn't give my name. And they had to come out 2 times, but after the second time, maybe, a few days or a week apart, after the second time, the neighbors sort of got the hint and they rehomed the dog. End of story. They didn't get rid of the dog as in euthanized, but they rehomed it. The dog just needed more space than they were given it. And so I think that we have good laws on the books. And if you're going to do this, I hope you will do it with making sure you get grandfathered in.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Rachel Hamill, followed by Helen Randy Willard.
Hello.
I just wanted to say a couple things because this doesn't necessarily affect me because right now I am within the limits of pets that I'm allowed to have. However, it is heartbreaking to me to think that if this was to go into effect, that people would have to choose which pets to keep and which pets to give away. I started volunteering at the animal shelter because I foster failed recently with a very old blue tick coonhound who I am absolutely in love with. And to think that more animals will be coming into that shelter due to this is just, it's appalling. It really is. They're short-staffed. They do amazing jobs. I truly don't know how they function as people when they leave there, because I just do about 4 hours twice a week, and I go home to my dogs and my cat. I don't have family. I live by myself, and my pets, they're my everything. I would do anything for them that I possibly could. And I feel that limiting a number of pets per household is really not the way to go. I have a whole room devoted to my cat so that the dogs cannot get to her because I have hunting dogs, and they like to harass her. So I feel like I could have 5 cats or 10 cats because they're cats. They usually don't all congregate in the same area, I have a fairly decent sized home for just one person, and I just feel that limiting the number of pets you're allowed to have is just, it's not fair, it's not right. I would love to foster more dogs, but at this time that's not a thing that I can do. That would be in the benefit of the dog and myself. So in the future, when my yard is completely fenced in, I would love to be able to foster more throwaway hounds. But what would I do if that put me out of, number wise, put me over the limit? Integrity comes to mind. I wouldn't want to live with the fear that, oh, well, if my neighbors found out and then, they didn't like my dogs barking, I'm not going to live like that, in fear and anxiety, and that's kind of what pets help you with anyways. I just feel that there's a lot of revisions, and it's really concerning to me that there will be a vote on this in a month if that's what I'm following. That's what I'm following. That's very concerning. There's a lot of people whose lives could change drastically in a month, and I don't think that's quite right. I think we're very far away from having a direct plan, I guess you would say. Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Helen Randy Willard or Wilford. Okay. B. Painter, followed by Anastasia Martin.
How are y'all?
Good.
I haven't spoken in front of a crowd since I was in elementary school, so y'all gotta have to bear with me, man. I can't believe I'm here, honestly. Hear about chickens and dogs and cats. I had a big speech planned, but I don't have anything to say. Mr. Allen that was there, and the majority of people in here, the animals, I think they spoke for all of us, trying to take people's pets, their friends, and their families away. There's not more problems in this city than that? There's way more problems. I could just keep going and going and going. It's ridiculous. And unfortunately, there is some animal abuse, and there probably is some houses that has some apartments that have too many dogs or cats. There probably is. But don't you have an animal patrol? When I grew up, the animal patrol would come to my neighbor's house for them not feeding their dog. Then my father would call for them because we're animal lovers, and you need money for all this and that. What do y'all do with our tax money? Y'all need a new police cruiser. I hope it's an animal patrol truck. What the landlords, y'all did us dirty. Y'all disrespected my father, this landlord. He gets no kind of help, but you help all these other people, all these other minorities and all these extra I'm not even going to go into today. There's more problems than some chickens and some cats and some dogs. And a rooster? You don't like the sound of a rooster? I don't like the sound of a cardinal and geese flying over my house. What am I going to come down here and ask y'all to ban the state bird? I don't like the sound of some people's voices in here. I don't like the sound of a train. I'm probably going to get booed for this. I don't like the sounds of kids. I used to live beside the elementary school. 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock sharp, they open that back door, them little boogers come running out there just screaming for no reason. No reason whatsoever. What, am I going to go up there and tell them to shut up? They can't do it? You know what I did? I moved. You're talking about all this fire station, whatever that little thing was, that's growing. Who are these people coming here? Outsiders tell us what we're to do with our town? I grew up here. It's not how we were grown. Y'all give all these rights to everybody else. You need to give the rights to the cats, the dogs, and the roosters. Cocks' lives matter too. Like, you give all these rights to everybody else. You got this. You spend all this money on this awesome nature trail y'all got by the river, which I love, but there's no access. I got friends in wheelchairs. I can't take them fishing with me. You built a dock at Waynesboro Park with our money, but the man in a wheelchair and a crutch can't even get over there. There's no path to it. There's homeless people and drug addicts all down. They're taking over this whole town. Why don't y'all spend some money on that, some time on that? People are scared to walk down the nature trail because there's drug addicts and bums bothering them. They tell their kids not to go down there, and where do their kids end up? In the road, riding wheelies, getting hit by cars, causing arguments. Let's talk about some real problems up here. Leave the damn dogs and the cats and the roosters alone, man. Cocks' lives matter too. I need to be excused. I'm ready to smoke.
Anastasia Martin, followed by Bruce Pell.
That's a hard one to follow. So, I would like to first say, I don't know if any of you remember way back in the day, not that you're old, but way back in the day, I feel old, of being in school and trying to give a speech in front of your classmates and peers. That is how passionate and how concerned this girl is over here. This girl, who is probably facing that fear, felt so compelled to come up here today in front of all of us, in front of you, and tell you how she feels. That fear of losing her beloved pets is much more powerful than the fear of public speaking. And this binder that I have here in front of me, this is the veterinary records for 14 cats that I have acquired I've been in veterinary medicine now since 2006. I don't know how many years it's been. The years have gone by. It's an occupational hazard for anyone who works in veterinary medicine, who fosters, who volunteers at shelters. We take our work home with us because it saves lives, and because there are animals who maybe they have terminal illnesses, they have seizures, they have behavior problems that can't get them adopted. They would be destroyed if we didn't take them home. These are their up-to-date medical records. 14 cats. This is where my money goes. I can't have children of my own. I will never get married because, hey, I don't want a husband to sit around and complain that I can't have children and I'm not doing anything, and that's just another mouth to feed, a human mouth that you can't tell to go shut up somewhere. No. I have my grandmother, who, bless her, she said when her husband passed away, she wanted to retire, have a house full of cats, wish granted. Thank you. This is my babysitter, my cat sitter when I'm at work during the day. She is obviously clean, happy, healthy. She's well taken care of. The cats are well taken care of. What's the problem? Because there's 14 of them? We have a nice, sizable house, nice, sizable yard. It's fenced in. The cats don't go outside unless they're on leashes. And yes, I'm that person in the neighborhood on Sherwood who walks her cats on a leash. Yes, they do. They are very well behaved because I took the time and put the effort into training them, into spending time with them, because cats can be trained too, and because they enjoy a little enrichment, because we care about these things. I don't know if you all can see this. I wore this today for this occasion. I work hard so my cats can have a better life. I work hard and earn my money through veterinary care. I earn my money through the care of animals, and then I reinvest that money back into my animals. I take extremely good care of them. There is a massive chewy box that comes every 2 weeks. They say that animals keep you fit and healthy. They say that you don't need a gym membership. That's true. Ask me how much litter I haul. I keep those litter boxes. I'm OCD. My house is clean. I'm burning calories. I'm wearing a Fitbit and I'm tracking it and I'm going, hey, this is a good thing. The numbers aren't what matter. What matters is the care that the animals receive, the care that the people in the house are in, and the fact that there is a community. I foster for Cat's Cradle too. This is a community that I can lean on. If I fell on hard times and I needed the help, I can come to them and say, hey, I need some help with veterinary care. I need some help. They will help me. We will help one another because we don't want to see these animals surrendered back into the shelters. We don't want to see families torn apart. The last thing we want is to see all of those cats that we work so hard to get out of the shelters returned because there's a number, a specific number that you came up with based on the average square footage. My house is anything but average. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Bruce Pell, followed by Ed Clark.
Councilman, Mayor Henderson. I do live in the great metropolis of Waynesboro on the Ellison Circle, and probably got many calls from us, and I'm here to talk about a little different type of animal. It's a party animal. We've, for 15 years now, my wife and I and our neighbors have been subject to very loud music from numerous parties. What they make the excuse to have a party, I guess, but several times a month and sometimes several times a week. We've had to put up with this for 15 years. We can't sit on the back porch. Sometimes you can't sit in the living room without hearing it vibrating the windows. Numerous calls to our police, and with limited success. Sometimes up to 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, my wife called Mayor Henderson, and apparently you have sent an ordinance, a copy of the ordinance to them. Since then, it has very much helped, and we thank you very much for that. Now, we only have to be subject from it before 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, they know now that fines are coming if they subject us and our neighbors to that. But we have to live with it during the day as well now. And we would propose that you extend that ordinance to, now you say you have a nuisance type of thing. And that's getting right into the nuisance area right there, where we can't even have our company over, can't talk around our house without being subjected to that. Loud music, not just music. I'm not opposed to them having a little party, having fun. Everybody needs that. But we don't need that. Not when we're trying to do something else. And we'd appreciate it if you consider extending your ordinance to conclude that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Ed Clark. I'm the president and co-founder of the Wildlife Center of Virginia here in Waynesboro, the world's leading teaching and research hospital for wildlife medicine. We train veterinary students from every vet school in the United States and Canada, and students and professionals from 40 other countries that come here to Waynesboro to study with our staff to learn to apply general veterinary skills to the very, very specialized world of wildlife medicine and clinical medicine for wild animals. I am here to support the intent of your proposed regulation, and that is to create a framework through which performance of pet owners is held accountable. I would much rather live next door to the Grahams with 6 dogs that live indoors than next door to the fellow who happens to live next door to me right now with 1 dog that barks all the time. And I think that you're on thin ice in some ways when you start to impose arbitrary numbers, and especially with the failure to grandfather. I think you have potentially a legal vulnerability from ex post facto regulation, that something that was done legally then subsequently is declared illegal and the person is held accountable. There's certainly a legal standard that needs to be considered there. I'm on a working group, that first meeting of which will be later this week, convened by the governor, to look at the very complex issue of the management at a state level of outdoor cats. Now here at the Wildlife Center, we treat thousands of animals every year, wild animals only. Last year, almost 4,000, and most of our animals come from this community and the greater Waynesboro, Augusta County, Charlottesville, Albemarle community. A few years ago, we did a study of our patients looking back at 11 years of documentation on the impact of outdoor cats on native wildlife. We found 83 species of birds and mammals that were affected. So the narrative that, oh, they just eat mice, they help with this, they help with that, it's a false narrative. We found that a cat interacting with a bird in any way, even when that bird arrives at the Wildlife Center, which is indeed the world's most advanced veterinary hospital for wildlife, there's an 81% mortality rate for birds. There's over a 70% mortality rate for mammals. So when these groups say, well, we're trying to keep animals out of the shelter, well, that's fine if they're going to homes. It's not fine when they're going back to the street. And those costs that they're supposedly saving, those are just being passed on to native wildlife, to the community, to the loss of our biological diversity. I'd like to encourage you to look at this in a way that holds people accountable for the impact the animals they own have on their neighbors and other people. Your rights to own animals should end where my property line begins. And if you have these animals in your home, no matter what the number is, and my life is not interfered with at all, good on you. The person who has 11 or 12 cats and teaches them to walk on a leash and keeps them indoors, I want to give her a gold star. The person who has one cat that is allowed to roam into my yard, kill birds at my bird feeder, use the children's sandbox of my sister as a litter box, that person is the one who needs to be held accountable. It's not a numbers game, it's a performance game. The Wildlife Center stands ready to work with City Council, with City staff on identifying issues, identifying the epidemiological issues, public health issues, as we are with the state, now with the General Assembly. And we support your intent, encourage you not to pass things that criminalize compassion. Thank you.
Casey Eldridge.
So I am a city resident, and in addition to that, I volunteer and foster for Shenandoah Valley. That said, I think we should reject, or the city council should reject these changes to the animal code. If the limitations placed on the number of dogs or cats allowed are arbitrary, they do nothing to ensure the welfare of the animals in question or in the community. As some other people have mentioned, existing laws regarding animal welfare and nuisance exist, and adding arbitrary limits to the number of cats or dogs someone can have does not help. It doesn't make any type of difference. You have said that the enforcement would be complaint driven, which means the owners are likely already violating existing laws because they've got a nuisance at this point for their neighbors to be calling on them. When I initially read the briefing on the proposed changes to the animal ordinance, I spent some time looking for the positive effects, or effects at all, of pet limits on animal welfare, community welfare, and municipal shelters. I was unable to find anything that correlates pet limits to positive outcomes for animals or the community. Nothing in the proposed amendments addresses pet owners' financial, physical, or mental ability to care for their pets. It simply decrees how many dogs, cats, or chickens is too many. Because there are no positive impacts that would directly result from these changes, the council shouldn't adopt them. Existing code addresses animal welfare, annoying animals, and dangerous animals, and arbitrary limits to the number of pets again, accomplishes nothing. In municipalities where limits exist, animal control officers acknowledge that enforcement is by complaint of a nuisance animal or other unlawful situation such as neglect. These are already illegal. There's nothing gained by enacting these measures. On the off chance that animal control finds themselves receiving complaints that a neighbor has 5 dogs, or 12 chickens, or 8 cats, and there are no other laws being violated, it's likely that these excess animals will be brought to the shelter. Our shelter, which already operates at the brink of capacity constantly. For the fiscal year of 2020, Shenandoah Valley Animal Services Center euthanized 4.7% of its animals that were brought into it. We're an open intake shelter. We have to take what's brought to us, whether that's 40 rats left on the porch or a chicken with, what is this, a wattle? He had frostbite to his wattle, whatever that is. Pig on the loose. We take it all. But we only euthanized 4.7% of the animals that were brought in through intake. The national average is 56% of dogs and 71% of cats that go into shelters are euthanized. And while I am convinced that our shelter is staffed with miracle workers and superheroes, the proposed amendments would put additional strain on the resources by virtue of increasing surrendered and removed animals that are going into the shelter and combining that with a smaller pool of potential adopters and fosters. To be clear, we would have a rise in our euthanasia numbers, and animals who would otherwise be loved and well cared for will die. While the positive impacts of pet limits are nowhere to be found, detrimental effects to mental health from losing a pet and involuntary surrender would be the loss of a pet are well documented. The additional enforcement and care of these animals will be a burden on taxpayers to the detriment of members of our community. In conclusion, these amendments do not benefit animals or our community and have the potential to cause real harm in the form of euthanized pets, a strain on our already strained shelter, and mental trauma to the residents forced to get rid of their pets. Nothing good will come from this.
Thank you.
Tracy Meadows, followed by Sheila Lilly, and then Kurt Lilly.
Tracy Meadows.
She left. Okay.
Sheila Lilly.
Okay, I'm a resident of Waynesboro. We live on 218 Skyland, and we are restoring a house right across the street from Lori's. So I just have a couple of comments to make. One is we are cat owners, and we have been cat owners for all of our married lives. To make us to buy a license for a cat seems just an odd thing. I don't know any other places that have ever had that. I've had cats all of my life, and I've never had to buy a license. I also read, and maybe I misunderstood, but I know the guy from the Wildlife Center addressed this, that cats shouldn't be out wandering around. Well, our cats, my whole life, have been indoor-outdoor cats. Cats love to be outside. It gives them exercise. Our cat can't even catch birds. She looks at them, and they run away. So our cat has never, to my knowledge, caught any kind of an animal outside. But she likes to wander around, and it gives her exercise, and she hates being cooped up. I don't know why you would want to coop up a cat like that. Also, my other comment is people are against chickens, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people drive up to Lori's house to buy her eggs. And if you get rid of the chickens, you can't get those fresh eggs that so many people, dozens and dozens of people in our neighborhood appreciate. And I know people just all around the town appreciate that. And you can't have the egg without the chicken.
Good evening, I'm Kurt Lilly, 218 Skyland. The Constitution gave the federal government certain authority and took some of our liberty. The state constitution as well took some of our liberties. We don't need the city to further take our liberties. Just because the state adopts something doesn't mean the city should. The city is its citizens. We don't want to have our liberties restricted. You say violating an animal, you say a violating animal may go undetected and unpunished. Okay, then don't bother with any ordinance. I don't think you should justify restricting us by citing what other cities do. We're our own city. I'm opposed to licensing cats and restricting them to being indoors and fining owners if they stray out of their yard. We've already raised taxes. We don't need another tax for our cats. I also believe all of your numbers are too low. The bottom line is, we the citizens of the city want to live good and peaceable lives, and we want to be left alone. Like someone said earlier, the city has got other more important problems. Work on those. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is all of the individuals that signed up to speak, and Dennis is signaling that we don't have anyone on the telephone.
Okay. With that, that brings us to item number 14. That is to adjourn the meeting.
What's the matter?
Can I ask my admin question that I bring forward?
We're not going to answer questions tonight, but if you've got, you can come up and make a comment. Yes, ma'am.
Just one quick comment. Thank you very much for letting me.
Can you say your name and where you live?
Yes, sir. Barbara Susan, and I live here in the city. I wanted to know, what's the rush? Why do we have to have this done by the 28th of September? Why can't we have it written in a draft proposal by the 28th and have everyone review it and then vote on it at the next meeting after the 28th when everyone has a chance to review it? That's simple.
Yeah, like I said,
Thank you.
we're not answering questions tonight, but if you want to.
No, but that's my comment.
Okay, yeah, and we can talk afterwards if you like. Okay, item number 14, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make it motion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. or Dr. Hofstadter. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is